Does the law of Kamma conflict with the teaching on non-self? Some beginning students of Buddhism may wonder whether the law of Kamma conflicts with the teaching on non-self, anatta. If everything including our bodies and mind is non-self, how is it possible for Kamma to function? Who is that performs volitional actions? Who receives their fruit? These sort of doubts exist even at the time of the Buddha. The following doubt arose in one of the monks. So it seems material form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness is not self. What self then will actions be done by the not self affect? Then the Blessed One, knowing in his mind the thought in the mind of that monk, addressed the monks thus: It is possible, monks, that some misguided man here, whose mind is subject to ignorance and overcome by craving, might believe that he can outshine and outstrip the teacher's dispensation thus. So it seems material form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness is not self. What self then will actions done by the not self affect? Now, monks, you have been taught by me in depth through repeated inquiry in regard to various subject matters and principles. What do you think? Is material form permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent oppressive or easeful? Oppressive, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent, oppressive, and subject to change fit to be regarded thus: this is mine, I am, this is myself? No, Venerable Sir. Therefore any kind of material form, whatever, is simply material form. Any kind of feeling, perception, volitional formations, any kind of consciousness, whatever, is simply consciousness. You should see it as it actually is with proper wisdom thus: This is not mine, I am not this is not myself. Seeing thus, a well-taught noble disciple becomes disenchanted with material form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. His mind is liberated. There is no more for this state of being. Before investigating this sutta passage more closely, let us consider the following comparison. Imagine that one is standing next to a river. For the majority of its course, the river passes through relatively flat land, and its current is slow. The banks along the river contain mostly red clad, and the colour of the river is thus reddish. Moreover, the river passes many densely populated areas, and it has been polluted by human waste and industrial toxins, decreasing the natural stock of aquatic life like fish and shrimp. The slow current, reddish tint, polluted water, and paucity of wildlife comprise the characteristic features of this river. Some of these features will be shared by other rivers, but this precise collection of features is characteristic to this river alone. Later, someone mentions that this river is called Castle River. People then go on to confirm what one sees oneself, that the Castle River is polluted, absent of fish, slow-moving, and coloured by red clay. One can make the observation that the body of water one is looking at is inherently complete according to its own nature. It is endowed with specific attributes, example, slow-moving, reddish, dirty, etc., because of various interconnected conditioning factors and processes giving rise to such attributes. When the current flows by the red clay banks, for example, the water is reddened. Various events and occurrences produce natural results. Moreover, as one is watching this river, the current flows by non-stop. The water one observes at one moment is not the same water as that which passes one by at a later time. This change in movement notwithstanding, the river retains its characteristic features, because the conditioning factors combining to form this body of water remain the same. If someone else comes by and declares that this river is called Castle River, and that Castle River is slow-moving, polluted, etc., this has no bearing on the true nature of the river. There exists no separate, distinct identity of a Castle River, which has some proprietary role over the body of water one is presently observing. Others may say Castle River erodes the red clay banks and is consequently tinted red. This may give the impression that the river is functioning in some kind of active role as a separate identity and is duly fined for its actions. Yet it is obvious that this body of water exists as an inherently complete causal process. The water striking the banks and the clay dissolving into the water is the cause. The reddening of the water is the result. There exists no separate agent or recipient in this dynamic. No concrete, independent entity called Castle River is visible. The current of water that has passed one by has flowed on. The water one observed a moment ago is no longer present. It is continually being replaced by a new current of water. We are able to describe or define this river simply by the various factors, conditions, occurrences, etc. that combine and produce visible characteristics. If an absolute or fixed entity called Castle River were to truly exist, then the current of water would not be subject to the various causes and conditions that interact with it. Eventually one recognizes that the identity of a Castle River is superfluous. One is able to describe and refer to this body of water in a fully accurate way without needing to apply this label. In truth, there is no such thing as a Castle River, no fixed entity. No self exists that is called Castle River, which owns, interferes with, or controls this current of water. Later one travels to another district. Here one wishes to describe to its residents the body of water that one previously observed. But one is faced with a stumbling block. One is not sure how to express oneself. One remembers that earlier someone referred to this body of water as Castle River. Now by applying this name, one is able to conveniently refer to this river when speaking to these other people. One can explain to them that Castle River is slow-moving, polluted, tinted red, etc. Here one gains a clear recognition that the name Castle River and the related terms of the river's attributes applied to describe this natural body of water is simply a conventional designation used for the sake of convenience in communicating with others. Whether these terms exist or not, or whether one chooses to use them or not, however, they have no bearing on this body of water. The river exists as a dynamic stream of water flowing continuously according to its own causes and conditions. One is able to distinguish between these conventional labels and the natural phenomena. Endowed with a proper understanding, one is able to use these terms with a sense of ease. In truth, conventional labels such as person, Mr. Adams, Mrs. Pierce, we, and you refer to dynamics in nature existing as an unbroken occurrence of interrelated causes and conditions. They manifest in myriad forms according to their specific conditional factors, including both factors inherent to the dynamic itself and related external factors. When a particular kind of interaction between factors arises as a cause, it produces the effect of change and alteration within a specific dynamic. In relation to human beings, that which is called Kamma and Vipaka, i.e. action and the fruits of action, is equivalent to the events and occurrences unfolding in line with the causal continuum comprising a specific individual. Every natural phenomenon is inherently complete in the sense that it is independent of conventional labels. This is also true for human beings, who exist independently from such labels as I, you, him, Susan, Paul, etc., who may be referred to as an owner, instigator, recipient, and so on. This is how things really exist according to nature, for the sake of convenience, while communicating with other people. However, one may choose to use conventional labels by assigning names and designations to these fluid dynamics. For instance, as David, Nancy, Duke, Duchess, Boss, etc., when people are identified by such labels, they may validly be referred to as the owner, instigator, recipient, etc., according to the circumstances. Regardless of whether these names and designations exist or are used, however, the dynamics of nature proceed according to natural laws and are shaped by their respective causes and conditions. The important point here is to be able to clearly distinguish between natural phenomena themselves and their specific conventional designations. One should not get these two aspects jumbled up. Before using conventional designations, one ought to have a thorough understanding of phenomena acting as a basis. Natural phenomena themselves and their conventional designations are both indispensable natural phenomena, often referred to as absolute realities, paramatta, or aspects of nature. Conventional designations have to do with the practical affair of human beings. Problems arise because people often confuse these two. That is, they try to make the phenomena conform to the designations, causing all sorts of trouble. The phenomena themselves do not suffer any affliction. They simply proceed according to their own nature. They take no interest in whether people attach to them or not. It is human beings alone who are afflicted. And because the phenomena themselves are unsympathetic to people's afflictions, people feel that their desires are thwarted and suffer even more. In the earlier sutta passage, it is obvious that the doubt-stricken bhikkhu confused principles he had learned about natural phenomena with conventional concepts that he was personally attached to, giving rise to confusion and perplexity. In the sentence, "What self then will actions done by the not-self affect?" the clause "actions done by the not-self" reflect this monk's understanding of natural phenomena, while "what self will be affected" reveals his attachment to conventional terms and designations. As a matter of course, these two phrases are at odds with one another. Principles of non-self and Kamma are not mutually contradictory, just the opposite. The former supports the latter, because the law of Kamma is only possible because of the truth of non-self. When a specific dynamic in nature unfolds, all of its component factors interact as a continual and interconnected process of arising and passing away. This allows for an interrelated stream of causes and conditions. No solid and constant entity lies in rigid isolation in the middle of this stream, impeding the current and preventing it from flowing as it does. If a fixed, permanent self, atta, were to exist, the law of Kamma would be impossible, because such a self would not be subject to causes and conditions. Nothing would gain access to it. Nothing would be able to alter or transform such a self. Eventually, as one sees in some eternalist doctrines, human beings need to be separated into two overlapping layers. People only receive the effects of their actions on an external layer, essentially or at the core. However, the self or soul remains constant, unchanging and unaffected by any events in the world. Human beings are able to perform volitional actions and receive the fruits of such actions without a need for an enduring actor or recipient taking part. When one encounters any process in nature, one needs to inquire into what are the interrelated conditions giving rise to the dynamics. Similarly, what are the results of this dynamic, i.e., how does it transform and change? In reference to human beings, the conditional factors collectively referred to as volitional action, Kamma, are the cause bearing fruit, vipaka, for the individual. One can refer to this process as human actions and the fruits of actions, without the need for a separate entity of an owner of these actions and their results. Kamma is equivalent to this process of cause and effect, which is distinct from the conventional labels we affix to things. When people agree with one another to apply conventional names on a natural dynamic comprising a single human individual, say by calling one person Mac and another person Lily, then an entity recognized as Mac or Lily is acknowledged as being the agent or recipient of specific actions. The natural phenomenon, the body-mind process, however, is inherently complete and proceeds irrespective of such names and conventions. It proceeds independently. When one uses conventional language, example, one says Mac performed such and such an action, and he received such and such results, then one should make it clear that one is speaking on this level. Likewise, when one speaks on an ultimate level or refers to absolute truths, example, one describes the causes and conditions that bring about particular results in a body-mind dynamic, one should be clear about this too. If one is aware of one's goals and objectives while using speech, and one does not mix up these various levels of truth, then there is no problem. One's examinations need not focus on human beings who are made up of an extremely intricate and complex convergence of causes and conditions on account of the addition of various mental factors. Even in the case of material things, for instance in the case of Castle River mentioned earlier, people are often attached to conventional labels and create fixed identities around natural phenomena. Mental factors are extremely subtle and refined. It happens that some people are not even able to discern change within the mind. There are those who make the claim, one says perception is impermanent and uncertain. Perception is permanent because wherever it arises, it invariably exists as perception. This is contrast. There are others who may be inclined to share this opinion, but this matter may be clarified by asking them to compare mental factors to material things. The above claim is similar to saying, who says the body is impermanent, the body is constant and stable. Wherever the body arises, it exists invariably as the body. The misunderstanding here is the same. It arises due to a confusion between the phenomenon itself, example, perception, or the body, and its conventional designation, example, perception, the body. Whereas the person here is ostensibly claiming that perception is permanent, what he in effect is saying is that the name perception is stable and constant. A study of the principles of Kamma by only focusing on conventional identities leads to an overly broad understanding of cause and effect. One may examine particular bad deeds performed by someone on a specific day in the past and link these to negative results occurring 10 years later. Here one outlines a causal relationship spanning the single stretch of 10 years. Such an examination fails to provide a clear and detailed glimpse of the causal process, because it does not explain the continual stream of relevant causes and conditions. A detailed study of phenomena, however, helps to discern the uninterrupted, interconnected stream of events, and reveals the true connection between actions and their fruit. Chris may get into an argument with one of his neighbours and becomes so incensed that he murders him. Fearing capture by the authorities and the vengeance of the man's relatives and companions, he goes into hiding. Eventually he is captured and punished. Even after his prison sentence is complete, Chris still feels afflicted by his evil deed, and is haunted by the image of his neighbour. He experiences both physical and emotional agony. He is unable to find any peace. His outward appearance also changes. He appears melancholy, suspicious, and miserable. On account of other factors, for example, the fact that he is physically strong, he becomes irascible and violent. After a long period of time, his personality changes. He becomes crude and cruel, and he covers over his suffering by acts of force. He becomes a danger to society and is unable to find any joy among other people. A short account of this story would simply state, Chris performed a vile act and reaped the fruits of his deeds. Using such everyday conventional language is easy for people to understand. It provides convenience for communication, but it only describes an external state of affairs, or a coarse picture of refined interconnected causes and conditions. It does not reach the essential causal interrelationship of natural phenomena. A discussion of the absolute nature of phenomena, on the other hand, describes the gist of natural processes. For instance, one may say, within this particular dynamic of 5 aggregates, anger arises in the mind, resulting in further volitional activity and an expression of physical action. The mind continues to be shaped by anger, leading to an alteration in the quality of the mind, which is now characterized by such negative states as mistrust, fear, and malicious thoughts. When the mind is frequently conditioned by anger, negative mind states are accumulated until they become fixed personality traits. These negative mind states create suffering within the individual, and in this case even lead to physical pain and suffering. Such a discussion of phenomena is complete without needing to refer to a man named Chris or to some conventional identity. The dynamic here is comprised of various factors which arise and act as an interrelated causes and conditions. There is action and the fruition of action without the need for an actor or recipient. Regardless of which kind of language one uses, the essential truth of the phenomena in question remains the same. The difference is that a discussion of the absolute nature of things mentions only pure aspects of reality, without adding conventional concepts on top of reality. The following story may help to clarify this matter. A man named Pong visited one of the senior monks in the monastery. He asked Luang Por, the Buddha taught that everything is non-self, anatta, everything is selfless and is insubstantial, everything exists without a true owner. There is no actor and there is no recipient of action. In that case, can I go and hit someone or kill someone because there exists no one who acts and no one who receives the fruit of action? Hardly had these words left Pong's mouth when the elder monk seized a cane from beside his seat and swung it at Pong. Pong barely had time to protect himself, and the cane struck him squarely in the arm. He sat rubbing the bruise. Long Paw, why did you do that to me? Pong rasped, barely suppressing his anger. What was that like? The monk asked nonchalantly. You hit me, I'm in pain, Pong replies, his face strained. Action exists without an actor. The fruits of action exist without a recipient. Feelings exist without an experiencer of feelings. Pain exists without one who feels pain. The monk said dispassionately, as if he were giving a sermon. One who looks for selfish gain in the teaching on non-self does not escape from self. One who grasps onto the teaching of non-self is indeed one who grasps onto self, devoid of any understanding into non-self. One who attaches to the idea that there is no actor has not relinquished the idea that a victim of pain exists. He has no insight that, in truth, there is neither actor nor one who experiences pain. The moral of this story is that if one is bent on the claim that no doer exists behind volitional actions, then one must also abandon such statements as I am in pain.